Hey everyone, welcome to The Big Flush, where we sift through a whole lot of bullshit every week. Your host is me, Zachary Marantet, and my co-host is John Enoch. John, how you doing today?
I am doing great, Zach. It's a lovely day to be alive, as always. A lot of stuff going on in the world.
As always, and almost everything is politicized nowadays. As we speak, Hurricane Dorian is making landfall in southern Florida. It just swept through Puerto Rico.
Oh, my
goodness.
And
Trump has a lot of bullshit to say. I mean, he's being as ridiculous as ever, as we remember last time with Hurricane Maria, which had about 3,000 deaths. Trump was all about Puerto Rico.
I'm surprised they
deliberately mispronouncing it.
I'm surprised they didn't name the hurricane after him and every other hurricane after him.
It has to be a female.
Oh, it does?
But I thought so, but Dorian is a male name.
Dorian
Gray.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they had to be named after females.
Yeah, well, think of a male one. Katrina, Maria.
Well, it could have been a transvestite or a crossdresser or a transgender hurricane, right?
Yeah, you're right, exactly. I'm so not woke, John. I'm so not woke.
Well, wake up.
I'm becoming of a guy my age.
That's the alarm clock. Wake up.
Yeah, so we've got our trackers here, so we'll sort of keep one another updated, and you guys at home as well, on what's going on with the hurricane, not only meteorologically, but also politically. We have a lot to say about how everything is politicized these days. We also wanted to give you guys an election update of the DNC. The starting point, I think, would be Bernie Sanders, who we all like. He's a nice guy. I think he means well. Maybe you don't, John. I don't know. We'll get into that later. But I think that he genuinely believes what he believes, unlike some other people who are fickle, real politics charlatans. I think that he's not that. But maybe we can. That's the whole point of our podcast, is we want to be disagreed with. This isn't George Orwell's 1984, where everybody nods their head out of fear for not being in line. We like disagreement here and robust debate.
Robust.
And, we're going to start that conversation on the DNC in a little while with Bernie Sanders' lack of understanding between the income gap and the wealth gap. Because he's always saying there is terrible, terrible income inequality in this country, and something needs to be done about it. We have to do something about racism, about homophobia, and all these other forms of intolerance that are so ambiguous and vague that the challenge against them will never come to an end, and people like me will always be necessary in the White House.
Oh, but of course. And how many houses does he have?
Well, I don't know. Well, it's all from his book sales, I thought.
Oh, well, yes. And
that's his reported income.
Oh, is he allowed to have profit from book sales, being a liberal in the Democratic Party?
Well, he is known to not fly, to put his money or lack of money where his mouth is or isn't in terms of his flights. There's a lot of reports of him flying like economy, maybe economy plus. You know what I mean? Like on Delta or Lufthansa or any of the main airlines, when you go over the ocean, you can get economy plus.
Maybe the pilots just don't like him being close to the cockpit, so they sit him in the back of the plane.
He's pretty docile, but I think that other people's money keeps him rather spry. I stole that from Steven Crowder. I'm gonna quote that.
Okay.
Because he is brilliant. I like that. I like what he's doing, and it was a shame what was the network Vox tried to do with him, to have him annexed, and I think he's quite funny, and sometimes
Leave Steven Crowder alone.
Leave Steven alone.
Leave him alone.
Remember that guy for Britney Spears? What was his name?
Leave Britney alone.
Not Chris Crocker. It was.
I don't know that guy. When I first saw that video, I was like, "What the?"
Well, what is the world coming to, eh? Because he made a lot of money off of that.
He did. I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, it was brilliant. And it was such a mockery. It was like, because she was such a train wreck.
Yeah.
And she was like the poster child of what fame and bullshit and how corrupt fame and the music industry and entertainment in general is in the country.
Right.
And how this, fairly innocent girl was like taken and put on this pedestal and turned into this like money-making machine, and she pretty much was just a placeholder, and how it just destroyed her emotionally and mentally till she broke down.
I mean, it's ridiculous. The YouTuber, like, leave Britney alone. But he is right. Like, leave Britney the fuck alone.
Yeah, leave her alone.
She doesn't seem like a bad person. Actually, I used to work with a young lady in Prague who, prior to her working with me, she worked in Hollywood, in Beverly Hills, for Britney Spears. And I guess she's just, this is an anecdotal thing, but she apparently was a very kind and gentle person. They say that about Drew Barrymore, what's his name? Hugh Jackman.
Oh, yeah.
Also a great guy. He'd rather hang out with his drivers and his staff than other wealthy celebrities and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there are nice people in Hollywood here and there. I mean, it gives you hope.
Right, exactly. But I've also heard from a lot of people that, remember we did the Bitcoin podcast a while ago with Mr. Klamka of More nightclubs. He's a Bitcoin.
Yeah.
He's a Bitcoin. Not mogul, but let's say tycoon.
Yeah, tycoon, visionary tycoon.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. He's a really intelligent person, and his networking capabilities are amazing. But he was the one who said, "Never believe the hype." Which, the word hype brings me on. It's a ham-handed segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the conspiracy theories and the hurricanes. So right now, Hurricane Dorian is making landfall. You have family, John, in Florida, and I have family by the Gulf of Mexico in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
Which is not a place to be discredited so readily, because Gulf Shores, Alabama, and I've traveled the world, has some of the nicest beaches, some of the most white, sugary, powdery sands.
Yeah.
It's one of the best beaches I've ever been to, Pensacola Beach.
Yeah.
And Pensacola is another city that's made a great turnaround.
Oh, yeah.
They have I'm not really familiar with the red and blue dynamics. Florida is one of those, well, it is a swing state. It's the most confusing state politically. Similar to Michigan.
It is. I mean, and you're absolutely right. I mean, my real estate partner for the real estate stuff I do, she goes down to Gulf Shore. Her mother lives down there, and she does real estate business down there half the year. And the home values are ginormous, $1 million plus homes. The beaches are like Caribbean beaches, are beautiful. And the politics is strange. It's kind of like when I was driving to Florida one time last fall, I stopped in Georgia to get some gas. And while I was at the gas station, Georgia State Trooper pulled in. Nice guy. He was getting gas too, older gentleman. And it was about the time when the elections were. And he said,
2016.
2016. He said, good morning. I said, good morning. And I think he asked me, did you vote today? I said, I sure did. And I said, God, the politics of Georgia are pretty crazy. I said, I thought this was a pretty conservative state. And what he said to me is, he said, well, it is. But the problem is, or the thing that's happened, is all the people that have transitioned from the country into Atlanta, either for the entertainment industry or the other industries and businesses that have come to Atlanta, because Atlanta's a sprawling urban area now, very vibrant economically. And he said that, the influx of all these people into Atlanta, it's such a dense populated area now,
right,
that the politics of just those people change the politics of the state, because everything is so sparsely divided, territorially in the rest of the state.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing with Florida. You have cities like St. Augustine, which is small. You have
by Jacksonville,
which is
I've been there, very
affluent, conservative. You go along the coast. You have St. Petersburg. You have Captiva, then you have Fort Myers, other very nice area down there. I can't think of it right now, but very conservative areas. Down south, you have West Palm Beach on the East Coast, Jupiter, very affluent areas, very conservative. But then you have Miami, which is a very big, sprawling area that's very liberal.
Right.
And there's been such an influx of people into Miami, cultures from all over the world, too. You have a lot of Cuban refugees, a lot of Hispanic refugees that have found their way to Miami. So just Miami can change the whole demographics and voting area of the state of Florida.
Right.
So it's crazy how the concentration in one city can change everything, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Right. Well, it's interesting because you
Yeah.
have these pockets of one concentrated ideology.
Yeah.
And you have a sparse, disparate population
Yeah.
spread out with a different ideology, and
Yeah.
it makes it all very different. I mean, if I was a candidate running there, it's very complicated and well thought out strategy would be required.
Oh, yeah. Michigan's like that, too.
Right.
I mean, Michigan, you have the Detroit area, which is a predominantly African-American city, very historically democratic and liberal viewpoints. And then you go to the west side of the state, which Grand Rapids, which is one of the biggest cities in the state, very economically savvy, home of Amway. Very, very right-leaning Christian conservative area, very religious area. And then you have all of the northern state and upper peninsula, which is, you know, very conservative, hunters, outdoorsmen type people, anti-government type people.
Right.
So the state itself is probably, you know, area-wise is probably 75% conservative, more libertarian, anti-government, leave me alone, let me hunt, you know.
Right.
But then you have Detroit and a couple suburbs surrounding it that are more liberal, that dictate the policy of the rest of the state.
When you say more liberal, wouldn't you say more leftist?
Yeah, more leftist, because liberal is a strange term, especially nowadays. I don't think it's an accurate depiction. Liberal, I think, in the classic sense of liberal, I think liberals and conservatives in the classic sense are more on the same page of a lot of things. Leftist definitely is a newer ideology, which is more radical, more, you know, environmentalist, fundamentalist. There's an IST on the end of everything.
Right. And it's not really that new. Far leftism goes back to Stalinism. That's a terrible example of how far people can go. And Jordan Peterson talks about that all the time. But I would say that the real problem with leftism, quote unquote, is its vulnerability to corruption about the very things that it is supposedly against. I mean, most people my age, when I told you I used to live in Prague, which used to be communist, and therefore people are wary and hip to the nonsense of communism. Like a communism is not some humanitarian or good person. It's a person who wants to exploit a vacuum in power.
Yeah.
Which is always what's happened in every culture, whether it's Soviet, Cuban, North Korean, and even Chinese. And I know their economy is doing well, but that's okay for somebody who believes that the end justifies the means.
Sure.
But the Great Leap Forward was horrible. Even now, with the protests that are going on in Hong Kong, there were protests before where the protesters disappeared.
Yeah.
And they showed up years later, skinny and frightened and petrified, and making confession tapes. And you see them for a little while, and then they vanish.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what happened to them. They make confession tapes saying we were sick in both mind and body and egotistical. We should have never have gone against the will of the party. We love the party. We hope that you will accept our love of the party before we die.
Yeah.
Chairman Mao is king and blah, 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 blah. You know, so it's all really interesting what's going on right now and the lack of awareness that a lot of people have. So we were talking about the hurricane and how even hurricanes are politicized these days.
Yes.
I mean, I remember a few years, I'm not into sports at all. If I was, I'd be into playing them for the athletic, for the health factor, and because it's good for your psychology, I think, to be engaged in that kind of competitive activity. But I'm not into watching sports, the culture. You look at every single commercial, and it's always about a cheeseburger
Yeah.
or some babe who never eats cheeseburgers washing a car and eating a Whopper at the same time. People who actually play sports don't eat like that or live like they don't have that lifestyle. But the
Yeah.
people who watch and experience masculinity vicariously through the players, they just sit back, eat their Whoppers, and I don't know, like experience masculinity
Oh, yeah.
through somebody on the screen. It's like watching pornography.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Do you understand the dynamic and why I'm kind of not into the whole sports thing?
Oh yeah. No, I get it. I mean, I used to be an avid sports fan. I mean,
Right.
I grew up playing baseball. Me and my cousin. I mean, we used to play in the backyard in the summer. I mean, he was the catcher, I was the pitcher. I mean, I can't tell you how many balls we hit over the fence into the neighbor's yard. The lady lived behind us used to hate our guts, I think.
Right.
I mean, I think we broke out a couple of her windows. I mean, I used to golf. I played football. I wasn't ever really good at basketball, but football and baseball were my two things. And I used to love football, and I used to be in a couple fantasy football sports leagues at a former job I had. And, I mean, I could tell you every football player on every team. And, of course, in fantasy football, you have to know their stats. You have to know what they do week by week because that's how you get your points for each specific player that you have to win every week. And I don't know, as I watched the sports from a different viewpoint, because when I was just watching it to watch the game, you know, it was kind of relaxing, it was kind of fun. But then when I started to watch it from a more like strategic or a more different viewpoint, you know, needing this player to do this and that player to do that, I got this different perception of the game, and I started to see it in a different way. I started to see the hypocrisy, like you're talking about, how, you know, this guy acts all like holier than thou on screen, but then, you know, off camera, you know, he's a total asshole in life. Or, you know, you just got a $35 or $100 million contract, but you're still going out on the weekend acting all ghetto and getting into trouble and shooting someone or being involved in this kind of drama. It's like, look, man, if you're fortunate enough to get a break in life and be an athlete and a gifted athlete, and you're able to get out of poverty and get this kind of resources and money, you know, generational wealth, and you're still acting like, you know, a hood rat, it was like appalling to me.
Right.
And at the same time, kind of, you know, I started to get a different perspective with college sports too. It's like, you know, I knew kids personally that went to the University of Michigan that, you know, were getting quiet bribes and cars that they, you know, they didn't own them, but, you know, they got a new Escalade to drive the whole time that was owned by some, you know, person that was an alumni, you know, wealthy donor to the school. And you know, messing around with girls and all kinds of different things, and, you know, getting a full ride scholarship because, you know, they can run fast and be on the sports team, but yet when they're done playing football for the school, they still can't do a algebra equation. They still
Right.
can't point out Iraq on a map.
Right. And remember, I wanted to talk about the hurricanes and the ridiculousness of how things are politicized. I was going to go down the Colin Kaepernick direction and how that politicized the NFL in a way that it was maybe one of the last bastions of apolitical territory where people from both sides of the aisle can find something, if they do disagree on it, it'll be passionately, and it'll be only over sports.
Yeah, no,
Now,
you're
sport
right. Yeah.
has become so politicized. It's hard to like certain people who have ignorant things to say. But I want to talk to you about this because it's something that I've been interested in. I know a lot of people who want to believe, and this is my opinion, that it's not real, and it's that fans want to believe that certain athletes who are in college, you know, they go on and they talk about, oh yeah, well, I'm doing microbiology and things like that, and I have a hard time buying into that because you don't really. There are a few people who actually go on after college and and don't do sports.
Sure, oh,
But they
yeah.
actually do the thing, the microbiology or whatever, and the football was their foot in the door because they may have had the grades in high school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would have started in high school, where they're playing sports and getting recruited for sports, but their grades are pretty good too.
Yeah.
But I think that's very few and far between,
Oh, I think so.
you know, and I just think that there's some kind of a conspiracy with that. And I know you're the conspiracy theorist on this show usually, John, and that's why I wanted to ask you off the cuff, because this sort of randomly came up in the interim of our conversation here, is do you think that this is all made up? That, oh yeah, they play football, but they're also these geniuses. And it could be coming from a place of envy, because I'm always jealous when people have two things that, like if somebody is attractive,
Yeah.
right, and they're dumb, I'm okay with it. But when they're
Right.
attractive and they're getting an MD,
Yeah.
I'm like, there's got to be something up with that.
Well, you know, I don't think, how can I
That's
put
my
this?
base reptilian brain.
I don't
acting
know
like
if
that.
it's a conspiracy, but I think what the media does, or the media machine, the sports media machine, or the overall media machine, however you want to say it, they seem to need to glamorize the dumbing down or the dumb elements of people in these positions. Because, I mean, obviously, I mean, I've known people personally. I mean, when I was, in my 20s, I was fortunate enough to befriend the Detroit Pistons, because I used to hang out at a very prominent club in Detroit where the Pistons would hang out. So I met Joe Dumars, Vinnie Johnson, Dennis Rodman. I knew him very well. Rick Mahorn, all these guys. And they all, Vinnie Johnson especially, they all have very successful businesses. So they were very smart guys. And you don't hear much about them. Magic Johnson, great example. When he got out of basketball, he's one of the wealthiest, probably, NBA players ever. Same thing with Michael Jordan. I mean, you don't hear a lot from Michael Jordan now, but I mean, both of these two men are probably worth $1 billion each. I know from a more localized level, I mean, I know a couple former University of Michigan basketball players, same thing, have founded companies. A very good friend of mine that I grew up with was the kicker for the Miami Dolphins. He was a Michigan State kicker as well. He founded a laser company that makes lasers for, the medical industry, does really well. So these guys are there, but you don't really hear about their stories. Every once in a while, maybe a local story from wherever they're living that does like a local feature on their business or something. But collectively, in the national media around the sports, you never hear this stuff. But what you do hear about all the time is, the ghetto-ass stuff, the fight at the club, all these kind of things going on. The missteps, the drug use, the alcoholism, you got this girl pregnant while you're married to this girl. And it seems like the media always wants to sensationalize the Jerry Springer type things.
Right.
Instead of putting this type of stuff forward. Because, if they genuinely were concerned about society or concerned about, like, putting up good examples for the younger generation,
Right.
they would be focusing more on these sports players. This is what happens after sports, or this is what you should be doing along with sports. You got to get your education. You
Right.
shouldn't come out of college still not knowing how to spell words or talk properly, or not knowing how to do math, or not knowing how to read maps or basic things.
Yeah.
This is college.
Right.
I mean, if you come out of a prestigious university like Michigan or Ohio State or UC Berkeley or wherever it is, that you should have a prestigious level of education along with your sports career. You can't.
Right.
It's almost like they're breeding horses to run in a race, and then when they're 2 or 3 years old and they can't run anymore,
Right.
they put them out to pasture. And okay, no big deal. You got a lot of money now, so you can live with your injuries and your ignorance and your
No
dumbness.
no continuous income.
But no continuous income. So God forbid your accountant rips you off, like happens a lot. And then what do? You do cheesy ass commercials for some used car lot.
Right.
You know, so
Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a good movie called The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. I don't know if you've seen that.
know, I
it's
haven't.
it's about the afterlife of celebrity fame, or especially in athletics, with shell shock. Not shell shock, but the concussion element that fighters face.
Yeah.
To be honest, one of the interesting things is how professional wrestlers like WWE, how good they are with kids and helping youth. They make very good ads before the show and says, don't try this at home. Because, you know, a few kids tried that, tried the moves, and ended up discovering the taste of their own spinal fluid.
Yeah.
And so there was a responsibility on behalf of WWE. And as goofy as it is kind of a family institution.
Yeah.
WWE, I would say they're more family friendly than a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. And because they know that kids, you know, young boys and some girls nowadays, they look up to people like that, and they have that responsibility of being good examples.
Sure.
You know, but sports, it's an interesting world. It's politicization now.
Yeah, and you're right, because now instead of just like hating the Oakland Raiders if you're, you know, San Francisco 49ers, now it's like people are hating different players based upon whether their politics are a certain way or not. I mean, they hated the quarterback.
With the eyes?
Yeah.
What was his name again?
God, was it Tim Tebow?
Yeah, Tim Tebow.
Yeah, they hated him because of his religious views and stuff. And it's like, all right, you know, whatever. The guy's religious. He says prayers before he plays. So what? He's a great athlete. You know, it's football. It's about him being an athlete, not about his politics.
Right. I don't know if I have no idea who's good or who's bad. I know that people say, for example, Colin Kaepernick is bad, but maybe he's good, and they're just saying that because they don't like him politically.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he should have stayed out of politics. But he made so much money off of the GQ and the Nike stuff.
Of course. I mean, hey, can I fault the guy for trying to, you know, make money and everything? No, I can't fault the guy. And if that's his personal beliefs, it's his First Amendment right to say what he wants.
Absolutely.
He's entitled to his opinion, and, you know, I don't necessarily disagree with his opinion wholeheartedly. But, you know, I don't know, like, if I'm working at Ford Motor Company, I can't go into Ford Motor Company and just get in the middle of the floor every day at my, you know, daily meetings and just avow my political opinions at work. I mean, I won't have a job very long.
Well, here's what everyone says, whether he's right or wrong, people are talking about police brutality. And I said, well, people were talking about Kim Kardashian's ass. People talk about Snooki from Jersey Shore, who, by the way, because, you know, we were talking, again, tangent, sorry, folks.
No.
But, you know, we were talking about Kim Kardashian and her efforts in the First Step Act, and it's like, holy shit, she's actually doing something good. She's getting a law degree. I think she got bored of she's jaded with being jaded. You know what I mean? And
So you're saying there is hope.
There is hope, and I think
humanity.
because she has the ability, she has the platform, and I think that it just clicked one day for her. This is just my theory, you know. I don't know why she would do this, what her motivation is, but she was going into prisons and meeting people, and yes, predominantly African American. There is a racial slant to the sentencing. There was a woman who she was a little bit older, but she sold some pot and was a non-violent, non-aggressive, non-homicidal drug dealer.
Yeah.
And she got some ridiculous sentence for selling a little bit of weed.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're in Canada now, so weed is legal here, and nobody's jumping off of buildings and going crazy.
Yeah, I know.
We just have a crazy prime minister.
Yeah, he's a little nutty.
He's a little nutty and a little bit dim-witted, but he's the reason the weed's legal. You know?
That's true.
But Kim Kardashian, she was going into prisons and finding people and getting them legal counsel, which they would on their own not be able to afford. And so she started, just a reminder from a few episodes ago, she started she teamed up with Donald Trump and did the First Step Act for
Oh, yeah, right.
convicts
Yeah.
who were released from prison to end the recidivism rate.
Right.
So that they will have a rideshare program to get to their job interviews and to get them to their job in the first year.
Yeah.
So she's been doing that, and she used to be, to me, not the very brightest person, and everybody is a little bit bitter that somebody so stupid can become so wealthy. A bit like Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you have to say, I mean, is she really that dumb and ditzy
No.
to become so wealthy?
No.
And I say the same thing about Trump. You might think he's an asshole, but if you think he's dumb and stupid, you are a fool, my friends. You are a fool. You do
Right.
not amass wealth. You do not build big skyscrapers and build a business around the world with the likes of the people he's done business with. You don't deal with the New York City infrastructure, you know, in trying to develop properties in New York with being a dummy. Whether he sounds like a buffoon or not, he's not a buffoon, and neither is she. I mean, her father was a very successful attorney. You know, if you look at her mother, she is a cutthroat, very wise businesswoman. So I think, personally, I think a lot of it was an act. I mean, and
Yeah.
brilliantly played.
Well, today, I think it was on Good Morning America, Snooki from Jersey Shore was on, and she has many children, and she's had a few children. And I remember last time I saw her, I actually could stomach sitting through it. She was on the Ellen DeGeneres show. She was on Ellen. And she had the hat on sideways. She just was that dumb party girl. But now that she's had these kids, it was really nice to see her today, because you could see that stupid doesn't necessarily last forever.
No, and
You know, she's got these kids now, and she's talking very responsibly. She's
Yeah.
dressed far more humbly, and I like seeing that turnaround in people. It's a little bit like Glenn Beck.
Oh, yeah. Well, Glenn, I don't know.
You don't like Glenn Beck?
I think Glenn Beck is very disingenuous. I think he's a fraud and a fake, and I think Glenn is somebody that I think he's a mouthpiece for the media establishment, and they just use him in whatever capacity they need him in.
But he's not on mainstream media anymore. He's got his podcast.
No, but we were talking about the show, like the best way to control the narrative, or the narrative before it gets out of control, is to control the elements that are like the independent part of it. And I think he's an element of that.
What do you mean? So he's an independent libertarian, and they got to him?
Yeah, I believe he's always been part of the establishment media.
Right.
You know, and it's the same thing. Like I've always said, you know, it's like with the Tea Party, for instance. When the Tea Party started, it was a completely independent third-party movement with just regular people that were fed up with the way government was going. I know because I personally went to about a half a dozen or so meetings locally. And I mean, there were a couple of the...
In Michigan.
In Michigan. And a couple of the meetings I went to, or rallies, or however you want to call them, there was probably 500-600 people there. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, just a mix of everybody.
Right.
And it was Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents alike. It was just regular people that were sick of the two parties, and they were like, you know what? Screw these people in Washington. We're taking the government back.
Well, why did they wait for Obama to do that? Why was that an Obama administration phenomenon?
That I can't tell you, because I really wasn't following them until they started to surface. And I went just out of curiosity to like, what's this thing going on? And I was really impressed. And it really was grassroots. And then in a very short period of time, it was like the whole movement was hijacked. It was hijacked not only by people now that came out of nowhere. I don't even think they were local, you know, that would come to the meetings and start talking more radicalized stuff. But then it was also the media that all of a sudden the media was not giving the Tea Party fair coverage. All of a sudden it was like this radical organization. I'm like, how's it radical? There's nothing radical about this. Like, you're lying. Like, where's this coming from? And then over time, the movement kind of became radicalized and now fit the narrative of the media. But that's the way it happened. It wasn't the other way around. So I feel like that what happened is factions, however you want to say, in the government or Big Brother or whoever, they always have their eyes and ears open for movements or things that might spark a mass change or revolt or whatever. And it's like a police force. They see
Right.
something starting to grow over here. It's like a weed to them. They have to go over and they have to infiltrate it and they have to cut it off at the knees before it can grow. And I think that's what they did with the Tea Party. And I think people like Glenn Beck, people like Alex Jones, people like Cenk Uygur on the Young Turks.
On the other side of the
On the
aisle.
other side of the aisle. So if there's independent people that are breaking away from the mainstream news media, you can't let somebody with an independent voice start to like be like the Pied Piper calling society over here and waking them up, and now they're like hip to everything.
Right.
So you either eliminate that person or you infiltrate that person or that movement or organization.
Right.
So that's how I feel about Glenn Beck. I feel like he's one of those people.
Right. Well, I've always found that a great frame of comparison for people, as Ben Shapiro describes, he uses the term heterodox, which is what I like to think of like what we're doing here. We're exploring everything and we're not allying ourselves or claiming war with anybody. We're just talking about shit.
Yeah.
And that's like heterodoxy. You know how Bill Maher he's against all religion, Christianity, which the left loves him for, and the right hates him for, and he criticizes Islam, which the left hates him for and the right loves him for, but for the wrong reasons.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the best frame of comparison I found with the Tea Party of the Obama administration is the current SJW movement. They have a completely different ideology, but are every bit as nonsensical when you look on the internet and see, you know, bloggers and people who have actually went to talk to them and ask them questions. Like, what do you want? What is your objective? What are you pissed off about? What is your problem? Articulate. And you get the same amount of angry babble. The more facts you push towards them, the angrier and more upset they get. And it's sort of a reactionary, they're both sort of a reactionary phenomenon. However, they do get led. You were mentioning Cenk Uygur, and we were also talking about Alex Jones, who we've mentioned before. Alex Jones was the one who, I believe, the straw that broke the camel's back with Alex Jones was his claim that Sandy Hook was a hoax.
Yes.
And we, you know, on this podcast, you as our conspiracy theorist have mentioned the potentiality. Just consider the possibility that there is a movement in place right now to disarm Americans, to make them vulnerable to something we don't understand that is dreadful and being planned.
Absolutely.
And one of the ways that they're doing this, like a Reichstag fire, is by creating all of these potentially fake, staged, tragic actor featuring false flag operations, you know, but we don't say that we know that.
Right.
The way that Alex Jones did. He also talked about gay frogs being an example of how the Obama administration was trying to make people gay. To what end, I don't really understand.
Yeah.
But both of those guys on the internet, whether it was InfoWars or the Young Turks, they both had humble beginnings, and they were honest and true and genuine.
Yeah.
Whether they were right or wrong, they believed they were genuine in the beginning. Then their studios changed.
Right.
So you were telling me you know a lot more about hardware than I do. So tell me about the change that you recognized in InfoWars before and after Alex Jones's change in ideology.
Yeah, so I used to, years and years and years ago, I used to follow Alex Jones. He was one of the first pioneers of, I guess, if you want to say conspiracy or, you know, things that the government was doing, like nefariously. back when the internet was new and YouTube was new, and I don't know how I found him. But anyway, he had put out a video about sneaking into a place called Bohemian Grove,
Right.
where he made the claim that these very, very powerful people in our government, you know, senators, Congress people, world leaders, people like Ronald Reagan, Gerald Ford, Nixon, Henry Kissinger, big people in business and industry, once a year would all go to this place in Northern California, kind of just above Napa Valley and Sonoma on the coast of California, to this wooden area of the woods, this retreat called Bohemian Grove, and said it was like this big, like, secret, like, I don't know what they call it, like, they would have these, like, sacred, like, services, and they would sacrifice either real babies, or they would sacrifice something that looked like a child symbolically, and they would have these almost like religious ceremonies, and it just really, really bizarre things that these very wealthy people denied even existed or would happen. And he snuck into this place with undercover cameras and actually filmed the whole thing and made a video about it. And they had this huge statue of an owl that's like 4 or 5 stories tall that I think they call Molech or something.
Molech?
Molech, I think.
That's a Jewish deity.
Is it?
It's from the Old Testament, I believe. But go on, sorry.
Okay, so anyway, in the video you can you can clearly see it's a little fuzzy because, you know, it's from 2004 or 5 or 6, something like that. So it's probably, you know, old VHS or old videotape. But anyway, you can clearly see that they do have a ceremony, and there's this small body of water, and at the front of the body of water is like this altar in front of this big owl statue, and here's this priest-looking guy with these, like, evil, like, devilish masks on, and they have what looks like a baby, and they do this sacrifice. And all around, Alex Jones is sitting in the crowd on the other side of the water with all the people. And I believe it's all men. There's no women there.
Okay.
And he filmed all this. So he proved that this really happens.
Right.
And then there was it came out later through the Nixon tapes, that as they were going through the Nixon tapes, very famous, you know, thing of the, you know, tapes that Nixon made in the White House when he was, like, talking, like, off camera or privately, but he always recorded what he said in the Nixon tapes. There's a segment in the Nixon tapes where he's talking about Bohemian Grove. And he says on the tapes that, yeah, I went up to Bohemian Grove a few times, and his quote was, but it was the most goddamn faggoty thing I ever saw in my whole life. Because apparently there's, like, orgies, like homosexual orgies that go on between these very powerful men. And
Many
whatnot.
of whom are against gays publicly, probably?
Yes, many of whom. So,
Right.
So when that's how I found out about Alex Jones. So I started to follow some of his posts and some of his things, and he kind of started having an online show, but it wasn't really sophisticated. It was almost like the startings of a video podcast.
Right.
And he made some independent films that were also about different conspiracies, and I saw a couple of them, and I thought they were pretty legit. You know, he seemed to present factual things with evidence, you know, video evidence or document evidence. He was real big about showing like MK Ultra and showing, like, the government, you know, doing mind control experiments on citizens, and then actually showing the declassified documents that you could go online right now and look up. It's real, like, it's true. And he was one of the first people online to, you know, bring a lot of this stuff to light. So he had a lot of credibility.
Right.
And then as he started to grow in popularity, all of a sudden he like jumped really fast. He went from just kind of being this guy that was a little controversial but was, you know, putting out this stuff about conspiracies to all of a sudden he moves into this like major studio
Right.
with major camera equipment and major technical stuff, like multi-million dollars. And I was like, and I know from being around the television industry, I know what a lot of this stuff costs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, he's got like over $1 million just in video cameras, like in the 2 or 3 video cameras that film him, not to mention the monitor screens and the software and the video switchers. Like, this guy's got like a full-blown like television station. How's he getting all the money? Like, is he making that much money off his like films, or where's it coming from?
Right.
And then about the same time, he had I think he had a producer or a girl that worked with him, and she left, and there was a big brouhaha in the little underground community that followed Alex Jones, because he hired a new producer to like manage all of his stuff and run everything. And she turned out to be a CIA agent who had supposedly left the agency for whatever reason and decided to come work for Alex Jones. So a lot of people were like, well, if Alex Jones is so anti-government and so, you know, keeps showing how corrupt the government is and is so paranoid of, you know, these world conspiracies he talks about, you know, eugenics and getting rid of the population control, and a one world government, new world order.
I remember him talking, not to cut you off, John,
Yeah.
sorry for that, but I remember he was talking about how antidepressants are actually mass suicide pills. They're aimed at mass extermination, because there are quite a few people who take antidepressants and it makes them suicidal because
yeah.
of the bad reaction.
And
I don't know if I can be taken that far, but that's the flavor.
He also talked about them putting fluoride in the water, and how the Nazis and Hitler put fluoride in the water to like subdue people, because fluoride is like a depressant, and it like it's like an anti-stimulant that makes people docile, and it stifles their thinking.
So do cigarettes, though. But he was one of the first people to be anti-cigarette smoking. Before there was a link established between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer.
Yeah.
That's why I wouldn't be taken that far with the Hitler and the fluoride thing, because he was actually against, in his crazy, weird mind, he loved the German people.
Yeah, but he didn't like Jews.
Right, but the water, everybody has access to the water. I believe it if it was just in the concentration camps where there were Jews, but I can't see him contaminating the people that he professes to have loved.
Well, he put it in the water that he gave the Jews, not everybody in Germany.
Oh, I see what you mean.
At least that's what Alex Jones was saying.
Okay.
So in the Alex Jones community of people that followed him, they thought, how on earth would Alex Jones allow somebody that was a former CIA person to come work for him? Because A, they're former CIA. B, if you really don't trust the government, wouldn't you think that there's at least the possibility that they're trying to infiltrate you and see what you're doing? Because if you're so anti-government and anti, New World Order, how could you possibly let someone from, the deep state come be the producer for your show? And a lot of people at that time were like throwing themselves around and saying Alex Jones is a shill and whatnot. But it just was strange to me, because it was like about that time, like I said, his studio just went from like nothing to bazillions of dollars worth of equipment. So he got a whole lot of money from somewhere. And it was kind of like the same thing with the Young Turks. Yeah, it was the same thing. Like, Cenk Uygur's show was modest, and it was very, I thought, well-balanced. Even though he came from a left side, it seemed like he was honest and legitimate. and then all of a sudden,
Everything changes and the ideology becomes frozen.
yeah, and you get unlimited money resources. I mean, again, just to put together a little podcast studio is like thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, even a humble one.
A humble one. To put together a major television broadcast facility like these two guys have, you're talking, what, $30 million?
Really?
Yeah.
That much.
Well, you got to have a building, a facility, right? The equipment,
Staff.
the staff to run the equipment. I mean, to run a television switcher, I mean, you have to have years of experience and training to do
Right.
that. I mean, it's to edit the videos, the software licenses. I mean, on a lot of broadcast software, the licenses are $100,000. I mean, it's just...
Well, what happened with the Young Turks is very similar to Alex Jones. It's just in an inverted way because the ideology is slightly different, but it's the same story. Cenk started out in the corner on a very low, like, basic level budget thing. He was funny. He is funny. He has the potential for comedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he seems like a jolly guy, and I liked him because he was very pro-gay. He was very pro-women. I won't go so far as to say feminist, because I don't like what a lot of feminists are doing now. I wouldn't want to associate myself or anybody with that term because it's such a loaded term. But he was always very on the money. He was critical of religion, balanced in a balanced way. He would criticize Christians in the Midwest
In the
and
Midwest.
Muslims in the Middle East.
Sure.
Sorry, that got a little confusing there because he talked about honor killings, which we here in Canada have many examples of, where daughters, young Muslim girls who
Yes.
become teenagers, they start to want to live the Canadian way. They want to have a boyfriend. They want to hang out with friends who are non-Muslim.
Yeah.
They want to have, you know, sort of modern, semi-casual sex lives without going, even if they don't go too far, the parent, especially the father, will have a problem with it.
Sure.
And we talked about before how in Mississauga, Ontario, 2 girls were murdered by their own family for that. And then when people said that this is a barbaric thing to do, Justin Trudeau said, "How dare you call another culture barbaric?"
Yeah, right. It's very
But the standards of your own culture.
very barbaric. I witnessed it personally when I was about 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. So you used to want to be a police. We'll get back
Yeah.
to the Young Turks and the difference between them and Alex Jones in a minute. But this is a good story that you told me before about your time when you wanted to be a police officer.
Yeah. I think I was 18. I was a senior in high school, or I might have just graduated high school. I was 18 or 19. And my mother had a really good friend that was a police officer in the city I grew up. And she had arranged for me to do some ride-alongs with him because I had interest in being a police officer. So I did probably half a dozen ride-alongs, and on one particular evening, we had just finished a traffic stop. I think we stopped somebody for speeding. And a call came in for a family domestic dispute. And
In Dearborn.
in Dearborn, and which is Dearborn, Michigan, if you don't know, is the most concentrated place in all of the world outside the Middle East, not just in the United States, but in all of the world outside the Middle East, of Arabic and Muslim people in all of the world. So we got a call, and Rich, who was the police officer, he said, "Oh, God, I've been to this house a dozen times, you know, the father and, you know, butts heads with the daughter because the daughter's trying to be Americanized. She goes to the high school. She's trying to have, you know, friends, and the father wants her to be strict Muslim, and they're always fighting, and I wonder what the problem is now." So we drive to the house, and we get there. And as we pull up, all these ladies are on the front lawn, and they're just screaming and crying, and it's just crazy, like pandemonium. We're like, what the hell? And of course, they're all speaking Arabic, so we don't understand what they're saying. So we get out of the car, and Rich, you know, he's the officer. He goes, and the front door is wide open, and I'm following behind him, and he goes through the front door, and I go behind him, and we go in the living room. And I'll never forget it. the living room. There's a young girl laying on the floor with her, basically her half of her face and her head blown off.
Shit.
Blown off, blood and guts splatter all over the wall and the
Brain,
couch.
you mean?
Brain matter all over, blood pool. Another lady, I think it was her mother, sitting to the side just sobbing and saying things in Arabic. And then off to the other side, in an easy chair, was this girl's father in his middle 60s, sitting there and just rocking back and forth, and just a very scowled look on his face, like, and a revolver sitting to the side on the table. And right away, Rich went over and grabbed him up and, you know, handcuffed him and whatever. And I was just standing there, not touching nothing.
He didn't resist arrest?
He didn't resist or anything, and he was speaking in Arabic and half-broken English, like, my daughter, and he was something, he used the word sharmuta, which means whore in Arabic.
Okay.
Well, what happened is that this was the family was throwing her a graduation party because she had just graduated from high school. And the father would not allow her to invite any of her American friends from high school.
Right.
Only her family members could come to the party.
Okay.
So she was like, "No, Dad, I want my friends here. And if my friends cannot come to the party, I'm not coming out of my room." So she went in her room, and she wouldn't come out of her room. So finally, at some point, her father was like, "You're not coming out of your room?" And she's like, "No." He's like, "Oh, okay, we'll see." And apparently he went into his room, went and got his gun, went back into her bedroom, grabbed her up by the hair, drug her out in the middle of the living room in front of all the ladies, all the aunts, her mom, everybody, and said something like, "You're my daughter, you disgraced me and my family, I brought you into this world, I'm taking you out," and shot her dead in front of everybody.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that scene as long as I live.
So you arrived, and
Yeah.
it's like a movie almost. Like, so there was brain matter all over the wall, and
Yeah.
skull, and she was a beautiful girl.
She was a beautiful girl, I would imagine 18 years old or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. The side of her face, I mean,
What face?
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I can't describe it. It was just like her face was gone.
And there's an odor.
Yeah, and there's a smell that goes with it. I mean,
Not a decomposition smell, not rotting at that point yet.
no, but it's a very unique odor or aroma that when a body is opened up, the different enzymes or whatever it is, and it's just something I'll never forget.
You've never smelt that before.
Never.
Right. But you
Yeah.
knew, like, if you were blind and you were exposed to it, would
yeah.
you know what it is?
I would know what it is right away.
I've heard from police officers who are friends of mine who've done autopsies on murder victims
Yeah.
that have been dumped and are in late stages of decomposition. The odor, he said, and I've heard it consistently from multiple police officers, the odor, even if you're blind, there's some instinctual thing that the pineal gland will make you aware of.
Yeah.
That is a member of your own species rotting, and it's a hair-raising odor.
Yeah. I mean, like I said,
It's different than what you're describing.
to this day. I mean, I'm so absent-minded a lot of times. I mean, I have a lot of problem with like recall of certain things. I can't remember what the hell I did yesterday, but I can remember that scene as if it was 5 minutes ago. And the smell, the ladies crying, I can hear them in the background. It's something I'll never forget. And
the women weren't for it.
No. I mean, obviously other police cars came. I mean, it was a big police scene. And when they finally brought him out of the house and put him in the back of the police car, as they were walking him, and all the neighbors were out, and it was predominantly an Arabic, block, Arabic neighborhood. and the ladies were, some I think were spitting at him, and they were all yelling and swearing at him, and you know, so that was many years ago. I mean, I was like 18, 19 years old, so things have changed considerably in the Arabic community since then. I mean,
For better or for worse? And we're talking Dearborn.
oh, for way better. I mean, the culture is way more acclimated and assimilated into American culture. There's still, you know, some hardliners, but not like that. I would be very, very surprised in this day and age to hear something even remotely close to that happening now. But at that particular time, I mean, you know, you had people, first-generation people that had come over here, and they brought their ideology and their religion and their views with them, and they were very strict. I mean, when I was going to school, you know, there were a lot of Arabic girls, and, you know, you'd meet one at a dance, and you'd want to, you know, hang out at the mall or something, and, you know, you'd be having a, you know, soda or something, talking, and the girl would be like, "Oh my God, there's my cousin over there. I gotta go. I
Exactly.
can't.
That's
can't
happened
be
to me
seen
before,
with you."
too.
And yeah, and it's like, and you don't understand because you're not brought up. And I mean, I was brought up really strict.
Yeah.
I mean, I was. My parents were strict, but it was nothing like that. The level of it. So.
Well, and also you're a boy. It's different when you're a boy. Even in the German culture, so my grandfather was very strict with me only with certain things. Like when I needed to learn how to ride a bike when I was maybe 3, 4 years old, without the training wheels, he was very strict, and my parents had to intervene.
Oh, wow.
He went German, like full Gestapo, hardcore, because I'm a boy.
You will ride the bike today.
Yeah. What's the matter with you? Like freaking out, like making you stand up with the shoulders back kind of thing. The German people aren't like that so much anymore because their culture has become much more Americanized. However, my mom, when she grew up and became a teenager, she talked about how the parents were they would not let boys around.
Wow.
And even when my grandmother, after my grandfather passed away in 2006, I was already openly gay at the time. I had a boyfriend, but I always had pretty girls come into the house to hang out with me, and they'd want to go up into my room. And my parents knew.
Why is it that gay guys always get the prettiest girls to hang around with them?
It's a rule.
Such bullshit, man. It's bullshit. Okay.
Hey, you have a lot of pretty girls. You're not gay, and you have a lot of pretty girlfriends.
Yeah,
too.
but
friends.
Yeah, well,
it's the safety.
Not in the capacity I'd like to have them in. I'll have you know.
But it's the safety and security, because I'm sweet with them, and I noticed it like before and after I came out. Before everyone acted like frigid with me, but then afterwards they all want to come over. But my grandmother was visiting, and she saw that. And I was like, "Oh, hey, Oma, like these are my friends. That's Sophie, Melissa, Ashley, blah blah blah," and she just gave me the look. You know, like, why are you going up into your room alone with them? Like, she must have thought that my 85-year-old grandmother has a dirty imagination, you know? Like, what am I having some kind of orgy, like me with 5 different girls?
My grandson is a stud muffin.
No, she didn't like it because she said, women are, what did she say? What did she used to say? Women are bad. They're crooked. They want to get the money from you. That kind of thing. But I don't know how she would handle it if I told her I was gay. So
very wise woman.
We didn't tell her. She just went on believing that. But there's all kinds of forms of strictness. But there's this honor element to the honor killing from the Quran that's different. And by the way, I've been to Dearborn too. I go to Somerset Mall to shop sometimes in Michigan, and there's a lot of people from the Dearborn community who are totally assimilated, totally love the American way of life. Guys going to strip clubs on the weekend, living promiscuous lives. They are into the Western thing. I even went to, and that's the other interesting thing, I went to a majority Muslim high school in Prague. And I came out in that environment, and everybody was okay with it. There wasn't anybody, except for maybe a couple white, like non-Muslim white guys, who would say shit. But you also wouldn't see women with their hair covered, very rarely. But I did have one friend who, when I went out for lunch with her in the city, she was on guard because her dad owned many businesses in downtown Prague. They were what were they? Albanian, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Azerbaijani. I know it started with an A. But however, when I would hang out with her at lunch, she would I can't be seen with another guy. And I was like, oh, don't worry, just tell him I'm gay. And she goes, no, man, that's going to make it even worse.
Right, yeah.
So there's I agree that it's a minority.
Yeah, definitely.
You
Definitely
know,
is a minority.
And there's a lot of great talk about Islam and Reformation. So if you know, I like history a lot, and Christianity is not that comparable to Islam because Christianity's had a reformation against an orthodox oligarchy in the form of the Catholic Church.
Sure.
All right. Islam has not had that yet. They have different factions like Sunni and Shia, and who is the real descendant of the original Prophet Muhammad. But they frown on translating the Quran from Arabic into any other language, which is a total throwback to Catholicism around the time of the Great Schisms and the Reformation. Thomas More, the author of the book Utopia, burned people at the stake for just owning a Bible outside of the Vulgate that was not in Latin.
Oh, nice guy.
You know, and he wrote Utopia, and he was canonized. I think he's a saint, according to the Catholic Church. But anyway, so there's this huge problem with fundamentalism and normal people who they're hidden amongst. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, now I want to go back to the Young Turks and talk about how money changes people's ideology, as it did with Alex Jones. The Young Turks, they were trying to say that there were no such thing as no-go zones in Brussels. There are. Molenbeek is a total no-go zone. What goes on there, if you get raped and you're a scantily dressed female, or if you're a gay couple holding hands and you get beaten up, the police just say, well, you're the idiot for going into that neighborhood. We're not fucking with those people.
Yeah.
You know? And then they went after Ayaan Hirsi Ali, calling her a neoconservative. Ayaan Hirsi Ali cannot experience sexual pleasure because her clitoris was sliced off at a very young age. And she's got a lot to say about, not patriarchy, but misogyny in the Islamic culture. And then people who are liberal like the Young Turks go 360 on her.
Yeah.
Or 180, I should say.
Yeah.
The same way that Alex Jones went 180 on the conspiracy theories by having that CIA producer come in.
Yeah.
You know, you think that he would be the first person to criticize something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So then you have to like question the whole thing. Were they at one point legitimate and then they got infiltrated? You know, did somebody make them an offer they can't refuse? Like, all right, you're either with us or against us, and if you're against us, then you're dead. If you're with us, then you're gonna live really well and have a lot of money, and no worries. I mean, there's real powerful forces at work in the world, and things aren't always as they seem.
Exactly right. So back to the hurricane, which is still making landfall in the tip of southern Florida. Just getting the update up here. It's fascinating how everything just gets politicized these days. So now, I don't know where I stand on this either, as a person who is looks at Donald Trump as a hold-your-nose pragmatic candidate. We don't like him, but we'll hold our nose as we continue the big flush of nonsense in the country. He's your best bet. He's not my best bet because I'm Canadian. But he did redirect about $271 million from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and towards border security. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, God. I'm fine with it. I mean, I am. I mean, look, the media circus on this issue and the political circus on this issue is just it's been so overblown, and to the point that it defies logic and rational thinking to me. I mean, the realism of the situation is that on average every month we're having 80 to 100,000 people coming into this country through the southern border illegally. At least that's what they're arresting. So that means there's more people coming through than what they're arresting. That's a shit ton of people. 100,000 people a month That's a lot. The city of Dearborn, where I grew up, the population is about 120,000. So there's about the whole population almost of the city of Dearborn coming into the country illegally every month.
Wow.
Something has to be done. It just, you know, they tried to turn it into a thing where, you know, and take Trump out of the equation. I mean, it doesn't matter who the president is.
Because Obama was working on a lot of the same things Trump was. He just was quiet about it.
And that's the biggest bullshit, and that's why, you know, it's like the Democrats now that are challenging Trump on this. Go fuck yourself. You're full of shit. Obama, when he was in office, was saying all the same things Trump was. Obama is the one, folks, that started separating the kids or enforcing that. Obama deported more people than Trump has deported. I know personally, because I have a couple friends that are Chaldean, that Trump deported their Chaldean relatives that had been here almost 25 years, that owned party stores and gas stations, and came knocking on their door because of minor crimes they committed over 25 years ago when they first got here. Deported their asses, didn't care that they had families and grandkids. So this isn't a new thing with Trump.
Oh, that happened under Obama.
That happened over Obama, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is not a new phenomenon.
Right.
But, you know, we have laws in this country. We can't pick and choose which laws to enforce and what not to enforce. We can't allow the whole rest of the world just to say we want to be in America. Let's just go to America, and then we just say, come on into America. You and I cannot just go tomorrow and decide that we're going to be citizens of France or Brazil or Mexico, for that matter, or anywhere else. We can't just do that.
But we can go to France, break our leg, and get free medical coverage on their taxpayers' dime.
Well, that's nice. I mean, not that I want to break my leg, but I mean, but it's... Look, I wouldn't have a problem with somebody being in this country and getting injured or sick and getting treatment. I really wouldn't, because if I was on vacation in Mexico or somewhere and something happened to me, I would sure hope that somebody would treat me and help me. So I really don't have a problem with that. But when it becomes systematic, like now the healthcare industry is so overwhelmed in certain cities and areas of the country because all that is there is illegal citizens that, you know, they're having to treat so many of them that they're losing so much money that they're going out of business and closing their doors, and they can't treat regular people, you know. And I certainly can't be in line with any type of government assistance whatsoever, whether it be local assistance or federal assistance or state assistance. When you have people on the street that are citizens living in tents and homeless shelters, veterans that have mental or health needs or are going hungry, or you know, anything like that. When you have citizens in need, they have to go first. You can't be helping everybody else.
Yeah.
And it goes to like even foreign aid. We give so much in millions and millions and millions of dollars in foreign aid to other countries every year. When we have people in need here that don't get any aid, it's not right. So we need to enforce the laws. And if, you know, the government, the people that we elect to do the job are making it difficult or running interference because of their separate political ideology. I mean, look, the polls say, and the American public say, that this is an important issue to them. That's one of the reasons, one of the strong reasons they voted for Trump. Is because he railed on border security and stopping the inflow of illegals. So the people want it. Because you have an ideology, you're elected by the people in America. So you're supposed to be representative of what they want.
Right. That's why he's called the populist candidate.
That's right. And that's why we have what's called a representative form of government in theory. You can't just get elected and go, I got elected, but I think this way and I think this way, so, this is what I think. I mean, I take issue with any candidate. I see them in these town halls, and a citizen will stand up and say, you work for us and this and that, and the candidate will go, you're wrong, I think this, and this is why I think this, and this. No, you don't get the opportunity as an elected official to tell a citizen you're wrong. You need to listen to the citizen.
Yeah.
And if there's enough citizens, a majority of citizens, that are telling you they want something to change, then you're obligated to do what they want because they elected you, and that's how our system of government works.
Well, it's similar with AOC because with her Green New Deal, people were saying, well, we'd really like to see you in a debate, Alexandra. We'd really like to see you in a debate and sharpen the blade of your ideology. Even her supporters were disappointed, radically disappointed when she said, this is not up for debate, which is what a lot of them say.
Yeah.
On the left. They don't sharpen the blade, as Steve Bannon said when he was on the Bill Maher show. Bill Maher also being a sort of heterodoxical thinker in political terms, wanting to have conversation, dialogue, no matter how bitter the disagreement may be, we need to have it, and if not to get to the bottom of the truth, to sharpen the blades of our own agenda.
Yeah.
And the left doesn't want to do that right now.
No, they don't. And you know what? I mean, it's a very egotistical, pompous stance. I mean, who the hell do you think you are? I mean, you got elected. Your obligation is to the people that elected you. And you can't just have an ideology or political mindset or be on a political side, because you belong to the Democratic Party doesn't mean that that's like a football team.
Yeah.
And you just play for that team.
But that's what it's turning into.
Oh, yeah.
The marketing for elections and this is Hillary. She stands here on this and that.
Yeah.
But she's got a little bit of a weakness because she supports same-sex marriage, but she wasn't hard enough on Omar Mateen during the nightclub shooting in Orlando.
Yeah.
Trump. There's a lot of that kind of shit going on.
Yeah, there is.
Changing.
So when it comes to illegal immigration, I mean, we have a process in this country, and you can find, I bet you can go to any immigrant in this country, regardless of nationality, that came here and went through the process legally, and you can ask them what their thoughts are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I bet you they will say that they are adamantly opposed to immigrants just coming in the country illegally.
Exactly.
Because it is not fair for somebody to have to wait in line, in some case for several years, jump through all kinds of hoops, pay probably a lot of money in fees, legal fees, having to provide documentation and proof, then having to do wrangling to get your family members to come with you, and the oaths and all that stuff, to go through that whole process only to have any Tom, Dick, or Harry, just come across the border without any means necessary and just be like, oh, fuck, okay, well, we're not enforcing the laws. It's like, well, why the fuck did I go through this process?
Exactly.
Then? It's not right.
It's a world turned upside down when you're having that. And it's sad because a lot of those people need to get out of their situation, but there's a lot of people all over who apply for refugee status.
Yeah, they do.
They come that way.
Yeah.
And then they prove that they have a case.
Yeah, and if you have a case, I mean, I have a close friend, that's a Syrian refugee. She came here. She was actually a sports reporter in Syria, and because of her father's political views and the fact that she's a woman and she's a Christian, when the political tide changed over there about 6-7 years ago, she did a broadcast that they didn't like, and she was on a hit list to be killed. And she came here. She got out just in the nick of time. She applied for refugee status. Took her about 2.5 years to get it, but she got it.
And she was in Syria the whole time? Or
no, she came here, and she was able to stay here with her sister and her mother, and they granted it. But she went through the process legally.
Yeah.
They found out that, yeah, it's true, and they gave it to her. And it didn't take a decade. It took about 2.5 years. She recently got her, permanent residence, and she's golden. So if it's a real case, I mean, they do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
So it's not like they don't handle these cases.
Right.
But to just let anybody in, it's just not right, man. It's just not cool.
Right. So back to that $271 million that Trump redirected from FEMA and towards border security. See, this is where it's going to be politicized. A lot of these hurricanes go through places that are on in the part of the United States, or places like Puerto Rico where you have Hispanics, and there's a ripe field to plow for race pimps.
Oh, boy.
So you have these hurricanes. I mean, the last one in Puerto Rico did claim about 3,000 people.
Well, we all know that hurricanes are racist, and they hate people of color.
Well, tornadoes are racist too. They hate white people in Oklahoma and Kansas.
They do.
As Hannibal Lecter says, good old trailer camp tornado bait white trash.
That's right. They don't like them white folks, them tornadoes.
Yeah, so it's a different kind of racism depending on the tornado or the hurricane.
Yeah.
But I've always thought being in a hurricane, I've never been in one. I've had an experience with a tornado when I was in Bayfield, Michigan. Is that Michigan?
Bayfield?
Yeah, or is that
Bayfield's
Canada?
Ontario. Little into Bayfield. I've been to
Holy
it.
shit. I was a little kid when I was there. I always thought it was freaking Michigan.
No, it's a lovely little cottagey town.
Yes, we stayed in cottages there.
Yeah.
That's in Canada?
I've been to it. Someone got me a gift certificate one time to stay at the Little Inn of Bayfield, a little bed and breakfast. It was nice.
Yeah, I remember it being nice, but I wasn't there since I was like 5. So don't hold it against me for forgetting that it's in Canada and not in the United States. I've always thought it was in Michigan. But it's the only time I've ever experienced a tornado. Mm-hmm. So we were there. The sky turned green. We were at this carnival. And we came home. I was with my parents, and the tornado started. And it was freaking terrifying until there was this group of Indian people, like as in from India, staying in the cabin next to us. They had a bunch of kids, and they said, hey, you have a kid. Let's all get together. We've got food. They had a power generator.
Oh, wow.
And it was kind of awesome. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when I'm watching the news and I see these people having hurricane parties.
Oh, yeah.
So they go to Costco, they stock up on water and booze and food. And
they just get drunk and ride it out that way.
Tanks of gas so that they can keep their power generators going, and everything's fine. They got the television on, music playing. Mm-hmm. They board up the windows. It's kind of like a little bit of a cozy adventure. I've always found like staring in the face of inclement weather while I'm comfortable to be the coziest and funnest way to experience
I wish
calamitous circumstances.
I wish I had an underground bunker with a nice fuzzy pair of slippers and a blanket and some VHS tapes.
Right. Why VHS?
I don't know, because I'm nostalgic that way.
Yeah, me too. I have candles. I like candles, like old school candles and candelabras. Even though I could just flip the light switch on, it's just sort of an innocent, nostalgic.
Candles make me think of da-da-da.
That's always been in Detroit. Phantom of the Opera, like you've never seen it before.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am not an animal. I am a
human being.
I am a man.
I think that's the Elephant Man.
It is, you know, when they
John Hurt.
They all show up with torches.
Right.
It's the other thing I think of candles is Frankenstein, scene in Frankenstein.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, don't burn poor Frankenstein. He's so misunderstood.
I always thought he was I always feel bad for Frankenstein. He's the victim.
He is the victim.
He's the victim of the movie.
Yeah.
But back to Trump, because we always go on these tangents.
Trump is the victim too.
He actually kind of looks like the Frankenstein too.
Okay, on the left, I'm sorry. I need to take your blood pressure medication. I didn't mean to get you all stirred up.
Yeah, what's the movement called? The Never Trump movement.
The Never Trump movement, huh?
Right. So I don't know if 270 million at a time like this is wise. He always seems to have weird timing. He also, remember the last time with Hurricane Maria, didn't give enough aid and just douched it up when he was talking to the people. Yeah, the people of Puerto Rico. But I think that's cognitive decline. I think there are elements of that with Trump, John.
Yeah, hey, there probably are. I don't know.
Not as bad as Joe Biden, though.
Well, again, it's one of those things like I've come to the realization that I don't know what to believe when I hear anything in the media now. I mean, the media, because of their hatred towards Trump and how strong it is, they're like the little boy who cried wolf.
Right.
So every single thing every word that comes out of Trump's mouth, every action he takes, every mannerism, every, law, everything he does, every breath he takes is demonized and is negative and is horrible.
Right.
So, I haven't been to Puerto Rico. I don't know if things are as bad as they say they are. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Maybe there was enough aid, maybe there wasn't. I don't know. I can't make a educated judgment on that. Maybe I should spend some time and research it and try to come up with an educated, decision on that.
Right.
As far as, the timing, I mean, I can't believe that Trump was just sitting around and saw that a hurricane was coming and was like, I know how I can fuck these people or I can stir shit up. I'll just send money down to the border right now. Give me a break. I mean, that's not how this shit works. I'm sure anything like this has been talked about and planned for quite some time.
Right.
The fact that some storm is brewing right now is irrelevant. And the fact that the news media is trying to find, it's like I just said, they're trying to find fault in every little thing Trump does. So it's so ludicrous and insane now that if a freaking natural thing occurs like a storm, they're finding a way to spin it negatively and associate Trump with it.
Well, they did that before with Hurricane Katrina.
They did, yeah.
Because it happened in New Orleans, which is tragic because I love New Orleans. I don't know if you've ever been.
I have been, but it's been a long time.
Well, it's still there. A lot of the cool parts of the French Quarter are still intact. There's a great place in the French Quarter called the Acme Oyster Bar.
Ah.
Oh, my gosh. Just to mention it on a tangent, I like oysters. I could eat them. I could eat like 100 oysters.
Wow,
you shuck them, I'll eat them.
Acme, is Wile E. Coyote there?
Yeah, that's the company from WB that makes all the the explosives. Acme.
Yeah, they're not too. Their quality control needs work.
Yes, exactly. Keep it out of the hands of anthropomorphic coyotes.
Yes.
But where was I going? So anyway, Acme Oyster Bar, wonderful place. New Orleans, especially the French Quarter, awesome place. It's up my alley. I love ghost stories, vampires, anything like that. And it's, an epicenter for those sorts of things. But after the hurricane, Kanye West went on on television with Mike Myers, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, he blurted out, George Bush does not care about black people. And Mike Myers is a very liberal guy. He just looked at him like, holy shit, that was not on the script and we're live. But hard to know if I don't see that being genuinely the case.
Well, there was a whole conspiracy around that. Are you familiar with that conspiracy?
That the hurricane was man-made?
Well, not necessarily that the hurricane was man-made, but that the way that they treated everything afterwards was like a test scenario for what things would be like in the country if they declared martial law or if a natural disaster happened, like at a bigger scale.
And they would need to have martial law?
Yeah.
What kind of natural disaster?
Like the power grid went out, a big storm, some type of invasion.
Like Y2K shit?
Yeah, like that. Or if there was a mass, like martial law, incarceration, something like that happened because they were trying to bring in a new world order, a different type of government or something along those lines. Because what they did is really unprecedented if you look back at it. They opened up the stadium there to like house people. And they put people in that stadium down there, the sports stadium, and then they locked people in it, and they wouldn't let people in or out for several days. There was, oh God, I wish I knew we were going to talk about this, because I would have refreshed my memory. But George Bush flew over the place and looked at it, but they didn't land because there was some type of toxic thing down there that because of the storm was either released into the atmosphere or something, that they didn't feel it was safe for anybody to be around it. So George Bush didn't land and walk around. I forget what it was. But they also went around in violation of the Constitution, and they sent the military around house by house, seizing people's weapons, because there was a lot of looting that was going on.
Right.
So people were holed up in their houses with, rifles, shotguns, assault rifles, protecting their property against looters. They were not only looting for, things like televisions and, valuable items, but they were also looting for food and water.
Right.
So people were defending the place, and the military went around and basically was like, if you don't hand over your guns, we're going to kill you. And they shot people and killed people. It was a fucked up scenario. It was really bad. So there's a lot of people that think that the way they handled the whole thing, the way they locked people in the stadium, and how unsanitary and the lack of food and everything,
right,
that it had to have been done purposely. And then you have to say, well, why would they have done it purposely?
What was done purposely?
The way that they went around and confined those people.
Oh, but not the hurricane itself.
No, not the hurricane
You're not
itself.
saying there's some kind of hurricane machine.
Well, it's rumored that they do have that ability as well.
Really?
Yes.
Hurricane machine.
Well, it's not hard to mess with the atmosphere. All you got to do is warm it up. Have you ever heard of HAARP?
No.
HAARP is in Alaska, and HAARP is a machine that is used to shoot rays up into the air that warms up the atmosphere. And if you can warm up the atmosphere and warm up the jet stream, you can control the weather. Yes.
I'll have to look into that.
Yes,
That's
we can. HAARP could be a good podcast because HAARP is pretty well known. It's very well known in the conspiracy community, and even our friend Jesse Ventura took his show Conspiracy Theory up there and filmed it, and they wouldn't let him on the property to see it.
So they're controlling the weather. The elites are controlling the weather.
Or the government or whoever.
Right.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very crazy stuff, man.
Yeah. I mean, technologically, I mean, of course it's possible. I mean, it's not like it's hard to do. I mean, the atmosphere and the weather is a very simple thing. I mean, it's just water and steam and evaporation and
pressure.
cooling and pressure. So it's, I mean, years ago they used to fly planes in the air and drop either dry ice crystals or salt crystals, and they could make it rain, because if you put dry ice in the air that's so cold, it forces condensation, and you force clouds, to produce rain. So, I mean, they've been messing with the weather for years. It's just, I'm sure they can do it on a mass scale now if they want to, and that's also a form of warfare. Like I said earlier, they could threaten a country like China and say, hey, or Japan, you don't like this? Well, we're going to cause a tsunami and frickin' wipe out your mainland.
But tsunami's not a weather thing. That's a tectonic thing.
Yeah, but what if you could use something to heat up the ocean or cause a wave in the ocean? What if you could do something sonically that put enough pressure on the surface of the ocean to cause a ripple wave that would send a tsunami into the mainland?
I mean, it's interesting, but I don't know if I can be taken that far right now. You'd have to explore it. I'm interested to hear about HAARP. But the tsunami thing, I mean, it's...
Everything is possible, my friend.
Trust no one.
Trust no one.
Fox Mulder would tell us.
Yes, trust no one, Scully.
So, all right, enough with the conspiracy. Well, never. It's never enough.
It's never
but
enough.
Let's go back, in the closing moments of today's episode. Let's get an update going on the DNC election. We wanted to talk about Bernie's lack of understanding between the difference between income gap and wealth gap, and Tulsi Gabbard, who you like a lot.
I
Sean,
like Tulsi.
and her alienation from the DNC debates, and basically her blackballing.
Those fuckers. Those fuckers. They're trying to blackball her.
So let's do it in reverse order. Let's start with Tulsi.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening with her alienation? How is that showing itself to be?
So they're trying to keep her out of the debates, and I mean the reason I think they're trying to keep her out of debates is because she can actually win, and they don't want her to win because Tulsi is unlike any of the other Democratic candidates running. She is more of a libertarian than anything else, and I'm of the firm opinion, I've spoke about it before, that when you get to the national level in Washington, I don't believe there's any difference. There's no such thing as Republicans and Democrats. It's all a show. Mm-hmm. Behind the scenes, they're all friends, and they're all bought and paid for by the lobbyists. Mm. So when you get somebody that comes along that's more of a libertarian, that thinks for themselves, especially if they're anti-war, that's somebody scary to them that the establishment does not want.
Tulsi's anti-war.
She's totally anti-war. She's been talking from day one that, she wants to end these regime change wars, as she calls it, and she wants to bring our troops home. That she's a veteran. She's been there. She's seen the high cost of war. And she thinks that we don't need to be around the war toppling governments and doing this, that we need to be mindful of the problems we have here. And that resonates with people like crazy across all political spectrums. She's very, very quick on her feet. She landed some devastating blows to Kamala Harris in the last debate.
Right.
I mean,
in Detroit.
Yeah, in Detroit. And Kamala Harris has not recovered from it. I mean, she's basically done. So what the DNC has done is they pretty much, they set up rules to be in the debates for all the candidates that, the rules were hard. It's like if you can overcome these obstacles, you can be in the next round of debates. And the rules were you had to get, I believe, 130,000 unique donations. Didn't even matter what the dollar amount was, but you had to have 130 unique contributions from people. So she was able to get that. And then they said, okay, well, now you have to poll at least 2% to be able to be in the next debate as well. Okay, well, she got that. But then they said, well, you have to poll at 2% or higher from at least 4 or more approved polling sources that the DNC approves, like official approved sources. But the DNC won't say what those approved sources are, which polls. Mm-hmm. And yet, they've got Cory Booker in the next debate and a couple other candidates already approved to be in the next debate that have not raised as much money or had the unique visitors that aren't polling as high. So Tulsi has got these other candidates beat all the way across, but yet they're already approved to be in the debate and she's not. Right. So you have to ask why? Because they don't want her there. Because the other candidates in the debate are just smokescreen people. They're not actually viable candidates. They're going to try and make it to be Joe Biden, probably. It's not going to be Bernie Sanders. It's just not.
Well, they betrayed him last time.
They did.
As much as I like Donna Brazile, she came forward on Tucker Carlson's show and on many other programs, and she helped Hillary Clinton, a lifelong friend, cheat on one of the debates because she gave her the questions in advance and Bernie didn't get them, and it affected his electability.
Yeah, sure.
In a negative way.
Sure. I mean, and again, it's not Republican or Democrat, folks. They're all on the same team. They did the same thing to Ron Paul. The Republicans did the same thing. Or the establishment did the same thing to Ron Paul. Ron Paul was a libertarian, ran as a Republican twice. Then he ran as a libertarian. He won the Iowa primary the New Hampshire primary. The news didn't even cover the fact that he won, and they basically just blackballed him and didn't let him in. And he was somebody that talked about the same thing, ending the wars overseas, bringing our troops home, and also auditing and editing the Fed, which
Right.
was like, death sentence if you want to be a candidate. The establishment does not want people running for office that actually will affect change.
Right. And I think Joe Biden as a candidate is ridiculous. I mean, we even laughed at him about him when he was vice president.
Yeah.
And what does he do? What's
Yeah.
his point? What is his raison d'etre?
And even Democrats are laughing at him right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. I think he's a nice man, but even people in the Democratic side are laughing at him right now. So if he's going to be your front runner and your own party people, some of them are laughing at him, how do you think that he has even got a snowball's chance in hell at beating Trump? And if the Democrats were really serious about beating Trump, honest to God, I mean, even though I like Tulsi Gabbard, I really believe that someone like her and the things that she's saying and the way she presents herself is probably the only real chance they have of defeating someone like Trump.
Of trumping Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else that they have running right now does not even have a close chance of beating
Right.
Trump. It's going to be such a landslide election that it's crazy. There's going to be more tears this time.
Tears and blood, I think, because
Yeah.
things are getting crazy on the left with their anger and their denial and their continuation of failed tactics.
Yeah.
Like how Einstein describes insanity, repetition, regardless of the same result.
Yeah.
But that's what I think with the Democratic Party. They're not speaking candidly amongst each other. There's a lot of fear of being claimed a racist. There's a lot of fear of being claimed homophobic or transphobic or whatever it is, whatever form of witchcraft people can get burned at the stake for nowadays.
Yeah. And people are sick of it.
Verbally.
People are sick of it. People are sick of being afraid to voice their opinion about an issue.
Right.
Because you can't even, have a little bit of leeway. If you
Right.
say, okay, yeah, Trump's an asshole, I don't like this, I don't like, but I do like the way he's, doing this with China. I like how he's standing up to the Chinese.
Right.
The fact that you even said anything whatsoever positive of Trump makes you a racist, makes you all the demonized things that they say Trump is. I mean, so people will, stop being your friend. People
Right.
will call you names. I mean, so, people don't like this atmosphere of this political correctness, militant,
Yeah.
attack thing that these people do.
Well, there's also the Orwellian element of inverted ideas, a word being used to describe an enemy when the person using it is the thing that they're accusing their enemy of, like
Yeah,
racism.
yeah.
So I often talk about The View and how I love Whoopi Goldberg. The Color Purple is one of my favorite movies. Excuse me. But the problem is they talk about racism all the time. But all they talk about, and even when they're talking positively about people, it's because of their race. They have a guest on, and it's, oh, you're the first half black, half Hispanic, bisexual person, blah, 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 to be
Yeah.
on television. Everyone cheers, and that's the criteria that they talk about them for.
Yeah, yeah.
It's horrible right now how obsessed the
Yeah.
country is with race, and they're talking about racism, but they never shut the fuck up about race.
Never.
Donald Trump is not a racist, people. He was the first person in the state of Florida to get his rich friends together to boycott clubs that had signs in front of it that said no Israelites, no
Yeah.
Africans, and no Sodomites.
Yeah, yeah.
No blacks, gays, or Jews,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Not in the same
Oh, God,
order, but-
don't say that too loud. They're going to run you out of town, man.
How is he a racist? He made sure that those things went away after the Orlando nightclub shooting.
Because he's a racist.
But that's crazy. He's not. He doesn't give a shit. That's
No,
the-
he's a racist. He doesn't
Evidence.
like. He doesn't like Mexicans.
He doesn't like Mexicans.
He
to come
doesn't
to the
like
country
black
illegally.
people. He doesn't like Mexicans or black people.
He's got a lot of black fans.
No,
I'm telling you.
how? It's impossible. No.
Yeah, no, you have to dig something up on me being racist, even though my father's biracial.
You must be racist because you just said you like Trump.
No, I don't like Trump. I'm holding my nose to the presidency, Mr. Liberal.
I think, where's the flush sound? It's really, I mean, of course this is idiotic what we're saying, but I mean, this is the mentality of, it's gotten so idiotic. It's almost like you need to put people in a timeout, like in a little baby playpen or something. And you know,
Safe space.
yeah, and what I think, like, if I could talk to Donald Trump, I would say, you know what, Mr. Trump, I think you should do. Like, if you do get reelected, I think you should be very, very sympathetic, and I think you should take, you know, an equal amount. Take another $271 million from FEMA, and I think you should, you know, set up some safe spaces around the country for all of our far left-leaning friends that are going to be very, very, you know, hurt and unsettled and just mentally traumatized by the fact that you got elected again, because we need to console these people. We really do. They are our brothers and sisters, and we need to care for them. I think it's the least you can do.
But I also think he owes a big thank you to Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Cuomo, Lemon.
Yeah.
Who else is out there that is just
ridiculously... And he owes a big thank you to all the people I just talked about, because it's their Trump derangement syndrome that is going to get him reelected. And mind you, I mean, people listening to this will be like, oh my God, he's a Trump supporter, he's a Trump lover. No, I'm not. I'm none of those things. I am a complete centrist libertarian, like an umpire. I just call balls and strikes, folks. And from people I talk to in all walks of life, which includes minorities and other, you know, nationalities and ethnicities, you know, day to day, working people, people of affluence, I mean, runs the gamut, social media. Everybody is tired of the circus that's been going on. It's like enough is enough. You know, it's just, you're your own worst enemy. You can't keep crying wolf. You know, you can't just keep, you know, jumping up and down, you know, throwing a tantrum like you're a little 3-year-old that, you know, your parents took your doll away because it's bedtime.
Right.
And that's what you're doing.
We're going to have to do a special, a year from this coming November, we're going to have to do a special episode in real time. You know, we'll stay up. We'll watch in real time. We'll have The View, because I think The View does a special late night thing.
I want to see Cenk Uygur.
And Anna Kasparian.
Oh, yeah, I want to see this year.
God, no!
I want to see him this year. That's one of the best YouTube clips out there.
Which, the Young Turks reaction video?
Yeah, when they figure out that Trump won the presidency.
Yeah, well, in fairness, it goes both ways, because I remember having a really good time watching, what was her name on Fox? Pretty lady, blonde. She went on NBC, and then she said that blackface wasn't always...
Oh, Megyn Kelly?
Yeah, Megyn Kelly, her. So she was on with Karl Rove, you know, the guy who always has documentation and shit, like, that nobody can see on the camera.
Oh,
yes. He has tons of friends that work at Fox News. He could say, okay, tonight when I'm on at 8 o'clock, have these stats ready and I'll prompt you when to raise them. Nope. He always has the paper or the chalkboard or the easel. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, I know Karl Rove. He learned that from Ross Perot, by the way.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Who also just died recently.
I know. But Ross actually did have the facts.
Right. But Karl Rove and what's her name?
Megyn
Kelly. I always want to say Kellyanne Conway.
Oh, no.
We're talking Megyn Kelly, and they were not satisfied with the results when Obama was reelected. And she went into the control room, and the camera followed her.
Really? I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's funny, because it happens on both sides. But I was surprised to see even Rachel Maddow doing it, because I don't always agree with her. But
Mad Dog Maddow.
Yeah, I kind of like her.
Do you?
I don't have animosity towards her. I know she's paid to have a certain ideology, but she is a Rhodes Scholar. She's smart. She knows her shit.
Then I don't like her.
Why is that?
Because if she's a Rhodes Scholar and she's smart, then she shouldn't sell out to get paid to have an ideology. If you're a news broadcaster, if you work for a major network and you are a news anchor, then it is not your job to have an opinion or ideology. It is your job to report the news.
Right.
Bottom line, end of story.
But those days are over.
Well,
We can't even, it's not just her, Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity. Bill O'Reilly's gone now, but Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, remember a few episodes back we talked about many years ago, he went on The View, but before he went on The View, a couple days prior, he was on the train on Amtrak with Whoopi Goldberg, Barbara Walters, among others, and they had reserved seats, he said, and you're not supposed to have reserved seats on Amtrak, so they're hypocritical about their elitism and their criticism of the elites because they are the elites.
Yeah.
And he tried to say that, and they called him out, and they said, well, you were a political reporter, and it was the first time you actually really heard somebody be challenged on that and have to say, whoa, I'm not a journalist or a reporter, I'm a commentator, which is basically what we're doing here. We're not claiming to be journalists.
Yeah, right.
This is just commentary, talk. People can comment and say whatever the fuck they want. They can disagree with us. We can have debate, but I don't hate anybody, and I hope no one hates us. We just want to have little chats about this stuff in ways that is not being done,
I don't know,
on the quote mainstream media.
Rachel Maddow just seems like a very angry woman.
Yeah?
She reminds me of like, who else? What's that other girl that Trump used to bash all the time? Seems
Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah.
Well, she is angry.
Yeah. Then Rachel seems like the same thing. She seems very angry.
Really?
Yeah, at least that's the impression I got.
Well, I get that. I don't see that with Rachel. I see that more with Rosie O'Donnell, with her inability, especially after that fiasco, that scandal that she had, where he said, I'd like to take some money out of her fat pockets. It'd just be fun, so I'm going to sue her. She's a big fat slob. I feel sorry for her girlfriend. She's a beautiful girl, and, you know, if she gets any second thoughts, I've got tons of friends that will gladly take her off Rosie's hands for her.
And you know why people like Trump? I'll tell you why people like Trump. Because they see somebody like Rosie, okay? Now, yeah, Rosie's a little overweight or whatever, but that's not why people would, like, jump on board with Trump being like that, because they see through Rosie. Rosie has always come across as a very, like, entitled thinking, angry person, throwing herself around so when they see somebody finally stand up to a bully like that, they say Trump's a bully, right?
Right.
But Trump, to me, has actually many times been an anti-bully. He's been the guy that's come around and basically told someone in no uncertain terms, totally uncouth, totally, you know, not being political correct, just calling you fat, picking on your weakness, physically, mental, whatever your weakness is, just pulling it right out there and basically giving it back to you. And I think people are like, yeah, that's what I want to say to that, you know, slob.
Right.
And I think that's why people like Trump.
Well, it's also Stephen Fry, who I always quote on what he says. I don't know why. I just love the guy. He's a brilliant mind. Stephen Fry likes to talk about the difference between American and British culture and how in American culture we revere and honor celebrities like they're these sort of demigods. In Britain, when somebody sees a celebrity, they just go, "Oi, Arnold! How you doing? How's Terminator?" Or like something like that. They don't respect him because they don't think that his celebrity status makes him anything more than they are. He's just a guy who happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Sure.
So there's a big difference between the two Anglophone cultures where there's respect for celebrities, respect for somebody because they're on the BBC or CNN. Yeah. And I remember with Anderson Cooper watching him on Celebrity Jeopardy. The guy's a dummy.
Yeah.
And he was playing for charity, so he would have had the incentive to
Sure,
look good
yeah.
and make a lot of money and do as well as he could. He wasn't trying to humble
Yeah.
himself, which is, I think, what a lot of his fans would say. Oh, he knew the answer.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want to come across as a douchebag. What?
Yeah,
He comes
totally.
across as a douchebag almost every day.
Yeah.
I've been saying since the Trump election. I never really thought that about most of those people prior to Trump. It's Trump that electrified the negativity on
Yeah.
that left side. And I, in a weird way, part of me is a little bit scared that he's probably going to win the 2020.
I mean, like I said, I would love to see someone like Tulsi Gabbard or somebody come along that could, take the presidency. But I don't see the way things are going. I don't see how it's possible at this point that Trump could lose, short of some major gaffe or scandal or something major happening. There's no way. There's nobody, and I'm trying to be completely, unbiased and just objective, and I've watched both Democratic debates. I've looked, in depth at all the candidates. Andrew Yang, I think, comes across as a very honest guy with, some of his ideas I don't like are kind of
Right
weird.
to live?
Yeah, but I agree with his foresight about the coming need for
Right to live.
a living wage.
That's what it's the living wage.
Yeah, the living
concept.
wage, because I agree with him. I think people have no clue about how technology in a very quick time is going to put many industries out of business. I mean, I had a limousine business that I ran, and Uber and Lyft came along and put me out of business in record time.
Right.
It's very, very real. He is somebody that doesn't talk like a politician. Tulsi Gabbard is somebody that doesn't talk like a politician. Everybody else in that whole arena and stage sounds like a canned, phrased politician.
Right.
And that's what people are sick of. So if you want to go up against the Donald, the guy that off the cuff can reduce you to rubble with insults and everything, because even though he's insulting you, and it's in some ways childish or buffoonish, part of that insult is really hitting a nerve and picking on your weakness that is partially true.
Right.
So his insults are very effective, even though they're delivered in a Fred Flintstone kind of way.
Archie Bunker.
Or Archie Bunker kind of way, but they're very effective.
Right.
So the only way you're going to overcome that or defeat that is to be more statesman-like and be able to push back on that in a professional or more classy way. And I think Tulsi Gabbard is somebody that probably could do that. But nobody else in that whole array of candidates. Bernie Sanders can't do it.
Right.
He just can't. Kamala Harris, she can't do it.
Yeah.
Nobody else. Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, gosh.
She sounds like an angry, I don't even know what.
She sounds like my high school math teacher
Yeah,
or something.
and I
like-
mean, come on. She lied to get into to college. She's lied about being a Native American her
Yeah.
whole life.
which pissed off like the #1 angry group is Native Americans.
Yeah, plus-
she lost their vote.
And people on the left, they're like making excuses for her, but they barbecue everybody else that
Yeah.
even slightly does the same thing she's done.
Right.
Joe Biden can't defeat Trump. I'm sorry, he just can't. And especially when the Democrats aren't even 100% behind him. So there's nobody that they have running right now that they're going to put in the place to run against Trump directly that can beat Trump. So Trump's going to win.
Or the hype of seeing all of these authority figures fumble around, go through their papers. Oh my God, what's happening? How can this was not predicted. We thought we had Florida and we thought we had Michigan and blah, blah, blah. And
yeah, and people love that. People love seeing the establishment on the ropes like during a boxing match getting their ass beat.
And I don't think that before, the thing is, last time, I think that people didn't know how entertaining that would be. And now that they do, because of the experience of last time, they're like, oh my God, I cannot wait to watch fucking the Young Turks.
Yeah.
And Vox and The View, CNN, MSNBC, basically all of the media that most people know about.
Yeah.
That we used to trust and rely on. Like, I remember I used to hate Fox News when O'Reilly, Eric Bolling, who also was a sexual pervert.
Yeah.
Roger Ailes, sexual pervert. I hated them back then, and I liked CNN. But now it's the other way around, and I'm looking forward almost in a really sinister, evil, basic reptilian pineal gland way.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing that reaction.
And see, this whole Trump phenomenon, too, has like made this growth of a new, like, cottage industry, right? So these people with all this hatred for Trump, they need to displace it somewhere. They need to have an avenue to go to like revel in that. So they're going to these news outlets. They're going to these independent, programs that, feed into what they're thinking. So they have like a soundboard of like-minded people.
An echo chamber.
An echo chamber,
Everyone's nodding and agreeing and saying, yes, I agree.
So that's a very profitable place to be for these echo chamber shows and podcasts and news broadcasts, and sponsors recognize that. So Trump has kind of like made this phenomenon almost into like a little cottage industry for the people that deliver, or reinforce, hey, you got a right to be mad. He is evil, and let's talk about it, and let's continue the hatred, and what are we going to do to fight this, and got to keep the fight alive. And, meanwhile, they're making, money off these people's engagement.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So they have to thank Trump, and Trump has to thank them.
Yeah, I mean, Trump, honest to God, and many people in the media have said this, both on camera and off camera, that Trump has been the best friend the media has had, because from the time Trump ran until now, the media has made so much money because Trump, they have to thank him.
Right.
The media has made record profits since Trump came into the political arena from, sponsors and, their shows and affiliates. They're making they've never made so much money as they're making now.
Right. And one of the reasons that I've heard articulated that they're confident that he won't win is because they used the photograph of his inauguration day. Excuse me. They used the photograph of his inauguration day and how few people were at the White House. But what I say to that, and then they compare it, juxtapose it with Obama's inauguration and how packed it was. Difference, I think, is that the people voted for Trump. Just because Trump won doesn't mean that everybody who voted for Trump likes him and will go all the way to Washington for his inauguration, the same way people who voted for Obama liked Obama and they went to the White House in droves because there was an emotional connection.
Well, yeah, plus it was historic, the first black president.
Yes.
So, I mean, it Yeah. I mean, if I was an African-American family, I mean, just for historical reasons, I probably would have taken my kids to be alive to experience that in history.
Yeah, I saw him speak in Prague, and it was very, very exciting for people. Even there, Obama talked about Masaryk and the history of communist depression, and he definitely knows his history a lot better than Donald Trump.
Oh, I'm sure.
He's not an idiot.
No, he's a smart guy.
He's a very smart guy. And I also saw George Bush speak with Vladimir Putin. Putin looked right at me for a good 5 seconds. I was like,
well, you're still alive, so you must not have done anything wrong.
Right. I told you the story about how I talked to Bush and Condoleezza Rice.
No, you didn't tell me that.
So what happened was I went to a British school, private in Slovakia when I would have been about 13. No, I would have been 14 at this time. So that's 2004. Yeah, 2004. George Bush came to Bratislava, Slovakia.
Junior or senior?
What do you mean?
George Bush Jr.
Oh,
or senior?
junior.
Okay, junior.
Yeah,
Okay.
George W. Bush.
George W. Bush, okay.
So he came to speak, and Vladimir Putin was there as well. And in my class, I was in a small group doing math work, and the headmaster, which is like the principal in a British school, his son was in my group. So the dad, and that's his dad. So his dad came in and he said, "Hey guys, let's go to the city center, and this would be a historical affair. You know, don't tell anybody else. We'll sneak out." So it was me, the headmaster's son, the headmaster, and a couple other buddies that were just happened to be there.
Yeah.
So we went. We all got in the guy's car, and there's barbed wire, machine guns, SWAT team looking people. It's very heavy security, and everybody was like, "Fuck Bush, fuck Bush, fuck
Oh, wow.
Bush." And I didn't like George Bush either. But I left my group, weaseled my way to the very front, and on the way to the front, who other than Michael Moore with a camera crew comes running by me. And
From Michigan, Michael Moore?
Yes,
Oh,
and he's
wow.
doing a documentary. So he collects footage all year long of the guy he hates, especially at that time.
Yeah.
So I said, "Hey, Mr. Moore, I'm from Windsor, Ontario," because he knows Windsor, Ontario
sure,
very
yeah,
well.
yeah.
He features our city in his movies as a difference between Detroit. And I know it's convoluted. There's a lot to talk about. But he said, "Oh, yeah, I was just in Windsor a while ago. Love the city. You know, have a great day, kid. Nice to see you." And, you know, he took off to a better filming location. I weasel my way. I have Putin up here for a moment, and he looks right at me for a little bit. And then he looks away. So then I go to the other side, and Bush is just wrapping up his speech, and he gets off the podium. So first is his wife, Laura, who's apparently a very nice lady. And I said, Mrs. Bush, I love you. Look at me, look at me, look at me. She didn't notice me. Then Bush comes by, and everyone's telling him to fuck off. And I said, "Hey, Bush, you're cool." You know?
That's what you said?
Yeah, with the peace sign and everything, even though I don't actually like the guy. I just wanted to talk to. I just wanted to get
Wow,
the attention
you're
of someone
slick.
important. And he looked at me and he goes, "You're cool too, son." He walked by, then Condoleezza Rice walks by.
Oh, Miss Condoleezza.
And I said, "Condoleezza, Mrs. Rice, look at me, look at me." She doesn't notice. And I said, "Condoleezza, you sexy beast." And she looks over at me and she gets eubonic. "You best watch yourself, boy." Like that. 13-year-olds can get away with shit, you know?
She is kind of a sexy beast.
She's not an ugly person.
No, I
Condoleezza.
thought she was sexy. I still think so. I saw her on TV recently. I still think she's sexy.
How old is she now?
I don't know. And there were rumors about, like, conspiracy rumors that she was kind of like, I don't know. I shouldn't say anything. I'll have to.
Is it involve sexual liaisons?
It involves sexual liaisons with the
Sordid affairs.
Sorted affairs with the establishment, Bush machine peoples coming up through power rankings.
Like Cheney?
Like maybe Mr. Cheney and maybe guy in charge of War Department, how you say?
Eisenhower?
No.
Or not Eisenhower. What was Eisenhower? What was his name?
The guy that...
Rumsfeld.
Rumsfeld,
Yeah.
yes, Rumsfeld.
Why did I say Eisenhower?
Well, he did. Eisenhower gave the famous speech about beware of the military-industrial complex.
Right.
Yeah, and then Kennedy did too, and then they killed Kennedy.
Right. They killed Kennedy?
They killed Kennedy.
Do you think Kennedy killed Marilyn? Monroe?
I don't think Kennedy did, but I think I think the government did, working with the FBI. I think J. Edgar Hoover and the mafia together killed Marilyn Monroe.
Because she was going to go public about her
Yeah.
affair with him the next day. How?
Yeah, she was going to go public with a bunch of stuff, and they couldn't have that.
Right. And so a lot of people say that because she technically died of an overdose of like sleeping pills
Yeah,
and alcohol.
That's what they said.
But
Barbiturates.
they also said that, not to get too graphic, like her anus.
She had suppositories.
Yeah,
and-
there were signs that people, like, you know, someone comes in the house,
yeah.
holds her down, puts duct tape on her mouth, shoves a tube up her ass, and that stuff goes into her bloodstream.
Yeah, right
You know,
away.
and everyone knew that she was taking those pills.
Yeah.
So they knew exactly what pill to make it look
Sure.
like it was an accidental death.
Yeah.
But anyway, John, we have a lot to talk about every week. Your conspiracy theories are always interesting. We don't say them on here because we know that that's the truth, but we want to get people thinking
Yes.
and asking questions
Yeah.
and having open discussion in
Yeah,
the name
you
of free
gotta
speech.
always think thoughts out of seasons, and just because you see something on TV or read it in a book or see it in a magazine or online doesn't make it true. You got to do your own research. But you know, if something seems too sensational to be true, but then you kind of research it and things make it look like it probably is true, then don't just discount it because people are going to laugh at you.
Right,
Because facts are facts, they don't lie.
exactly. And don't let people control your language either.
No. That would be a travesty.
Oh, yeah, I almost forgot to bring it up. But you know, in San Francisco, because they have such a high rate of ex-cons running around, they're trying to change the term from criminal or convict to, what was it? Justice-involved person?
Shut the hell up.
Yeah, justice-involved person.
Shut up.
That's hilarious.
Shut up.
It's a lot like Dick Cheney's term, enhanced interrogation.
That poor state.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and it's the most beautiful state in the country, a lot of people would think.
It was at one time.
Hmm.
It was. It's a cesspool of bad
Ideas,
ideas,
bad outcomes.
bad germs, fecal material on the streets.
Rats.
Rats.
I guess there was a return of medieval diseases that haven't been seen for centuries, and now they're back on the West Coast because of those policies.
I swear, I think we should just let California have what it wants. It should just be its own, like, deity, country, entity, whatever.
Well, there's a lot of people who take that very seriously. Same with Quebec and Canada.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you know what I think? Maybe we should take the money that Trump wants to use to build the wall across Mexico, and I think we build it across the edge of California.
I don't know. I like California. I like the psychology.
I like it
It's
too. I used to
enlightened.
live there. I mean, it's a beautiful place. I have very close and dear friends there. The beaches are nice. I love wine country. San Diego's amazing. I miss going and having Easter brunch on the Queen Mary in Long Beach.
Right.
But, I mean, you look at downtown with the tent cities, and you look at San Francisco, same thing. I posted a video on my Facebook yesterday or today? Yesterday, I think, of a business owner making a plea to Gavin Newsom. She lives in Sacramento. And she's like, Gavin, what the fuck, man? What the hell? I'm a business owner. I have a hair salon. I come to work every day, and I have to clean up human shit outside my front door before my customers come in. The police won't come. The police, you know what they tell me to do? They tell me to call you, Gavin Newsom, because the laws prevent them from intervening. They prevent them from touching the homeless people or harassing them. So when I come, there's tents blocking my door. They piss and shit on my entry. I pay the lease. I pay the taxes, but I have no control over my property, and they have more rights than I do.
Right.
You're killing my business. How are my clients supposed to deal with this?
Right.
You want me to leave the state? What the fuck, Gavin Newsom?
Well, and that's just one small business. Consider what
Yeah.
happened at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Where now they have to just allow people to sit down no matter what. They said is racist.
Right.
To charge people or to not allow people to sit there who aren't paying. How is
Yeah.
that racist?
No, I
it's
know.
racist to assume that bums are all black.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's racist.
It is. It is. I mean, should we just open the door to our homes? Well, you're not allowed to exclude. But there's homeless people, so you can't lock your doors anymore. And if you come home and there's homeless people on your couch, then you can't do nothing. And if you do, you're going to get arrested for messing with homeless people because they deserve a place to stay just like you do. And the fact
Right.
that you're the one paying for it that's too bad. I
Right.
mean, it's unbelievable. And in my lifetime, like if you would have asked me even 10 years ago to bet money that things would be this way,
Right.
I would have bet and I would have lost all my money.
Me too.
I
Same here.
mean, I would have lost it all. I mean, when I lived in San Francisco, the only place in San Francisco that was even the slightest bit maybe dirty or grimy or whatever was a place called the Tenderloin. And it was a few block area. It was a little seedy. You know, you could get possibly held up with a knife there or pickpocketed. I mean, there were homeless people. It was probably, quote unquote, the worst area of San Francisco, but it wasn't a very big area. And for all intents and purposes, compared to a lot of other urban areas, it wasn't really that bad. But now, I mean, and to think that, like, Sacramento's the capital of California. Sacramento is like as bedroom community city as you can get. I've been to Sacramento. To think that the homeless problem has not only spilled over from like Los Angeles, which is urban, San Francisco, which is urban, now all the way to Sacramento, where you have homeless people in tent cities in Sacramento,
Right.
is mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing. And I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, but that state is in so much trouble. I genuinely feel for the people that live there and own businesses there and that are probably stuck there. I really do, because I don't know what they're going to do. And if there's going to be a civil war, it's going to be a civil war in the state of California, of the people that live there trying to take their state back from these whack jobs that have allowed this to happen.
Right. Interesting. Well, John, I'd say to be continued on that one.
Yes,
because that's
to
a
be continued.
whole other ball of wax.
Whole other ball.
We'll have to start it as our next podcast topic.
Yes.
Guys, friends, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, fellow primates, and anybody else that I forgot that can speak English and understand it as well, keep holding your noses. This has been The Big Flush. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Ciao.